Okay, today we're on part 5 of Flying Solo by Ralph Fletcher. We are starting off at 11:30 Connections, which is another one of their writing times. Last time we left with visitors in and out of the classroom, and so we're going to see what happens during writing. Bastian couldn't write. He sat staring out the window at a huge, billowing cloud rushing against a blue sky. He was trying hard not to worry about Barkley, about the quarantine, but he couldn't help it. More than anything, he wanted to be home with his puppy. Barkley will be okay, Mom had said before he left for school. Every day, thousands of dogs fly in airplanes all over the world. He'll be all right. It wasn't the flight that worried Bastian. True, the puppy would be alone, flying by himself in the cargo hold of some jet, but he would probably sleep through most of the flight. It was the next part that Bastian hated to think about. In Honolulu, the puppy would be taken to a special place for quarantined animals. Bastian pictured some kind of animal jail, cages, iron bars. Bastian got up, walked to the bookcase, pulled out the fat dictionary, and turned to the cues. He found it on page 1474. Quarantine. A place where persons, animals, or plants having contagious diseases are kept in isolation to prevent the disease from spreading. He slammed the book shut. Contagious diseases? It was stupid and cruel to quarantine a perfectly healthy puppy for 4 months. For absolutely no reason. He opened the thesaurus and thumbed through it until he found it. Quarantine. Verb. Synonyms. Separate. Hospitalize. Keep apart. Isolate. Sean's stomach felt a little better now. He loved this time of day, late morning when the room began to warm up. Today it was cloudy, the skies threatening rain, but on some days just before lunch, a shaft of sunlight reached into the back of the class and put him in its spotlight. It was so peaceful to sit quietly wrapped in that bright, warm cocoon. Sean closed his eyes. The image of Darlene entered his mind. She was much younger than his mother, with blonde hair and a pretty smile. Dad worked the 3 to 11 shift as a security guard at a computer factory. Most nights he stopped at the bar on the way home, so he rarely got home until way after midnight. Darlene was usually in the apartment reading magazines or watching TV when Sean came home from school. Some days she ignored him. Some days she tried to boss him around. Other days she made him feel kind of funny. The way she followed him through the house. Sean glanced over at Rachel. She was still writing. Sean picked up his pen and started to write. He wrote fast, his face close to the paper. And this is what Sean is writing. She never talks, but I wonder if maybe sometimes she closes her door tight and turns a little. I'm so sorry. I'm going to start that part again. She never talks, but I wonder if maybe sometimes she closes her door tight and hums a little or whistles a little tune. Or maybe late at night when everybody's sleeping, she lets out a couple words real soft just to see if she can still do it. I wonder if it's all scratchy and creaky. I bought an old fishing reel for $2 off Dad's friend Roger, and it was so rusty me and Dad had to oil it up with a gallon of WD-40 until the crank turned nice and smooth. Last month, me and Dad found 3 baby kittens and were trapped in a trash can. Dad said he didn't know how they got in there, but somebody sealed the lid real tight, and I heard them when I walked by and pulled off the lid. A white one and 2 mixed, and no mother around, and crying like the end of the world. They kept crying and licking me, and their tongues were like sandpaper. It took a long time to get them calmed down. Darlene's allergic to cats, so we had to give the kittens away. We found good homes for all of them, but I wish we could have kept one. We better stop if we're going to share any of these. The kids blinked and looked up from their desk. The voice had come from Karen. Yes, Mrs. Fabiano, Bastian said. Come on, Karen said, ignoring him and leading the way to the back of the room. The other kids got up and found seats in the share area. Share time in Mr. Fabiano's class was always the same. Kids took turns reading their writing, moving clockwise from Mr. Fob, who always sat by the corner of the bookcase. Today that spot was held by Tim. Tim? Karen asked. No way, Tim said. I'm not reading today. I'm on strike. Robert? What the heck, I'll go, Robert said. He cleared his throat, pounded on his chest, and read. I have been thinking about how we don't have any teacher today. I remember this science fiction movie I saw one time when John slept over, and there were these aliens who were using humans in this town for an experiment. The aliens had planted these tiny computers in the human's brain. Only the humans had no idea they were being controlled from outer space. That's like today. Everybody's acting like we're getting away with something by being totally free. Well, I disagree. I would not be surprised if today is like an experiment for how kids would act without any teacher. Mr. Fob just left us a note, but I don't really trust him. I don't really trust any grown-ups. Robert stopped. Is that finished? Missy asked. That's all I got, he said, putting down his paper. Why would Mr. Fob do an experiment on us? Tim wanted to know. Do you have like a theory? Maybe it's not Mr. Fob, Robert said, shrugging. Maybe it's Mr. Peacock. Maybe he's trying to show kids can't control themselves, so they can make more rules in the school. I seriously doubt that, Karen said. But anyway, you can prove him wrong. We are proving him wrong. Christopher? Yes, I shall read my masterpiece, Christopher declared proudly. You will now hear the legend of Sir Francis Braveheart. Braveheart? Robert asked. No, Braveheart, Christopher said and started reading. On the night before the great battle, Sir Francis Braveheart came to dinner with a legion of other fearless knights. As he sat down on a chair, he suddenly farted, and the chair exploded in a cloud of foul smoke. The boys cracked up. You moron, Jasmine said. Opinion, Christopher giggled. He read. The other knights were stunned and excited. They had finally found a secret new weapon that might work in their bloody war against the all-powerful Dark Knight. That's all I have so far, Christopher said. Stay tuned for the next adventure of Sir Francis Braveheart. That would make a good movie, Tim said. I'd go see it. I wouldn't, Rhonda said. Jessica, Karen said, you're next. Okay, Jessica said, but you guys won't like it. She read. I read about these parents who left their kids alone in the house for almost a week while they went on vacation. The kids were both under 10 years old. The parents got arrested when they came home. What did they expect? Another time, 2 brothers were home alone. They went into their father's bedroom to look at their father's gun. The gun cabinet was unlocked, and it was loaded. Stories like this are so predictable. How can anybody be shocked when the gun went off? That is what is happening today in this room. We are playing with a loaded gun. Someone could bring a lawsuit against the school for what is happening in this class today. I know this because my father is a lawyer. A good lawyer would argue that the school was negligent by leaving us alone and unsupervised, not just for a few minutes, but for the whole school day. How could any jury possibly disagree? We are not equipped to deal with running our own class. Doing math or writing is no big deal. But what if a fight starts? What if someone has an epileptic seizure? What if someone farts? Christopher interrupted her. Kindly be quiet, Rhonda told him. Yeah, no one interrupted you, Karen told him. She looked at Jessica and nodded. Go on. That's about it, she said, glaring at Christopher. You End all your paragraphs with questions, Robert said. He leaned over and pointed at her paper. Ever notice that? Jessica said, looking down. Could your father sue us? Corey asked. I doubt it, Jessica said. We're all minors. Fact, Christopher put in. We have time for a couple more, Karen said. Missy? She said, clutching her paper against her. Missy never shared her writing. Okay, Rachel? Rachel handed her paper to Missy. Missy cleared her voice and began to read. I was thinking about when we read Hatchet by Gary Paulson at the beginning of this year. Brian is flying on a bush plane to visit his father in Canada, but the pilot has a heart attack and Brian has to take over the controls. He learns to crash land the plane and survives the wreck. After that, he has to learn to survive in the wilderness. And sort of like what's happening today. True. Nobody had a heart attack around here. And it's true that we are not in the Canadian wilderness. But we are trying to see if we can survive on our own without any grown-ups. I halfway think we're doing the right thing, but I halfway think Jessica's right. It is dangerous. Anything could happen. The first sensible word I've heard all day, Jessica said, smiling at Rachel. Other than mine, of course. Hatchet was cool, Bastian said. Remember when the kid ate the raw turtle egg? That was nasty. We have time for one more, Karen asked. Sean? Sean shook his head. Okay, Sky. Nobody in the class really knew Sky. He'd arrived in the school in January, and he still hadn't made any close friends. Rachel often saw him at recess, standing alone on the playground or sitting by himself. He hardly ever talked in class, and he had never once read aloud any of his writing. Now Sky looked down at his paper and shrugged. With a soft voice, he started to read. I was thinking about when Mr. Fobb told us on Monday about that time he was rushing his pregnant sister to the hospital. He knew he was doing something he'd never forget, and he said to himself, I'm inside a story. That reminded me of one time I was surfing in California. This monster swell came and I caught it perfectly. For a few seconds, I was inside the curl of the wave. It was my first time ever, and it didn't last very long, but I'll remember every detail of that ride until the day I die. The board under my toes, the water a half-foot thick all around me, the blue-green light coming through the water, the hissing sound of the wave, so much spray flying in my face I could barely see, my ears popping from the change of air pressure. It was an awesome rush like nothing else in the world. I felt happy and scared, and the whole time I kept saying to myself, hey, I'm in it. I'm inside the curl. Sky looked up. That's it, he said. Cool, Jordan said. Other kids nodded. Yeah, Bastian admitted. Pretty good. That was great, Sky, Vicky said. The bell rang. Lunch. 12:10. Lunchtime. Hey, we better go, Vicky said. Yeah, but the whole sixth grade will be in the cafeteria, Tim pointed out. How are we going to keep the teachers from finding out? They'll find out, Jessica predicted. People will talk. Yeah, you, for instance, Bastian muttered. Everybody, for instance, Jessica retorted. You think Robert and Corey aren't going to tell Josh? The other triplet. The kids all looked at Robert and Corey. The two triplets sat with their brother Josh every day at lunch. We're innocent, Robert said, throwing up his arms. Yeah, Corey said. We didn't do it. We demand to see a lawyer. Listen, guys, Karen said. We're only trying to do this for one day, right? 6 hours? And we're close. It'd be a shame to get caught now. I say we keep it a class secret, Jasmine said. I'm not telling anybody, not even if they torture me. It won't work, Sky said quietly. A story like this is contagious. Bastian flinched at the word contagious. Quarantine. He's right, Karen said. Morgan already knows. You really think he can keep quiet about this? No way. And other kids will find out too. I say we tell the other sixth graders after we swear them to secrecy. We've got to make them swear they won't tell any teachers until school is over. It's worth a try, Jasmine said. 3 o'clock. That's all we're asking. It's less than 3 hours away. Fact, Christopher said. Never work, Tim said. There are about a gazillion teachers' pets in the sixth grade, maybe more. Rachel started scribbling a note. Wait a sec, Missy said. Rachel's got something. Ah, Bastian muttered. The silent pilot speaks again. This is your last day, Rhonda told him. Just pretend for one day that you're a nice person. My dog thinks I'm nice, Bastian thought. He smirked at Rhonda. Missy took the paper from Rachel and read out loud. Maybe the other sixth graders won't tell any teachers if we make them feel included, if they feel like they're part of it. Part of it how? Jasmine asked. By keeping the secret, Jessica said, nodding at Rachel. Then it's like they're sort of getting away with it too. It's your only hope. Our only hope, Jasmine smiled at her. Sounds like you're with us after all. Not really, Jessica said, folding her arms. In the cafeteria, Rachel sat with Missy and Rhonda. Miranda Lundstrom, a girl from Mrs. Friedman's class, sat with them. Tell me, Miranda begged. Tell me. Swear you won't tell anybody till after school, Missy said. I swear, she said. Geez, Missy, what's the big deal? This is really serious, Missy said in a hushed voice. She ripped the wax paper off her sandwich as if she was unwrapping a fabulous gift. This is highly confidential, as in top secret. All right, already, Miranda said in an exasperated voice. I swear on a stack of pictures of Rob Nelson. That's better, Missy smiled. Rob Nelson was the cutest boy in sixth grade. She leaned forward and whispered, Mr. Fobb's out today. Yeah, Miranda said. You mean out like absent? Gee, that is exciting. We've got no teacher. Who's your sub? That's the thing, Missy whispered. We don't have one. We're running our own class today. Miranda gave Missy an incredulous look, then glanced over at Rachel. Rachel nodded. What? Miranda hissed. She smacked her forehead. Remember, Missy said, you promised. Who? What? I mean, Miranda sputtered. How did you get away with that? It started off as a normal day, Missy began. From the other side of the room, Rachel heard a snort of disbelief, a squeal of outraged delight that quickly got squelched. Looking around, Rachel could see dozens of kids in pairs, threes, and fours, heads bent together, all talking intently. She closed her eyes, but even so, she could feel the story spreading through the cafeteria, carried on thousands of whispered words, a fire burning up from a dry forest, jumping from table to table. Little flames she could feel licking at her insides. For the second time that day, she could feel the pressure of words in her chest. Words that wanted to get out, but somehow could not come out. She chewed a bite of sandwich and swallowed it down. 12:21, early dismissal. Bastian gulped down lunch. There was a phone right outside the cafeteria. He jammed in the coin and punched the number to his house. I'm sorry, a voice said. The number you have called has been disconnected. Please, he hung up the phone. Disconnected. All at once it hit him. He was moving. Bastian walked down the hallway and out the front door of the school. Nobody tried to stop him. Nobody said, "Where do you think you're going, young man?" He couldn't believe how easy it was. He strolled past the flagpole and down the street. The skies had grown heavy with clouds and the air smelled like rain. He had no idea where he was going and he didn't care. His feet kept moving and he just walked. He walked past a young woman washing her car. She waved at him, and he waved back in the front yard. Bastian saw a little boy playing the ball with a bulldog. Barkley. For the 100th time that day, he tried not to think about the puppy, but not thinking had turned out to be a lot harder than he'd ever imagined. He went past a Catholic school, Our Lady of Sorrows, and stopped to watch the kids playing soccer on the playground. They were all wearing uniforms, boys in slacks and white shirts, girls in identical tweed skirts and white blouses. A couple hundred kids, and he didn't know a single one of them. He knew that moving to Hawaii would feel exactly like this. No friends, hundreds of strange kids. Most of them would stay apart, watching, checking him out from a distance. He would go through his own kind of quarantine. He left Our Lady of Sorrows and walked to the end of Walden Street. The Galleria Mall was down the street to the right, but his feet didn't turn that way. Instead, they turned left and began carrying him toward his house. At first, going home and seeing Barkley seemed like a terrific idea, but he couldn't do it. He sailed past his own street, heading straight toward the house of his best friend, John Leclerc. He got to the house and rang the doorbell. "Yeah?" John's voice came through a crack in the door. "Hello," Bastian said in his deepest voice. "This is James Warren, the district truant officer. Are you John Leclerc? Open the door. I have a warrant for your arrest. I have a report that you are playing hooky from school today. Don't you realize that's against the law?" "Bastian!" John laughed and swung open the door. Bastian followed him inside. "You're the last person I expected to see. I thought you were having like tons of awesome fun in school. Your last day of school." "John, you won't believe this," Bastian said, following John into the kitchen. "Mr. Fobb's out today, right? But they didn't send us a sub. They screwed up in the office or something. We got no teacher in class." "Yeah, sure," John said. He opened the refrigerator door and looked inside. "And I bet they put free video games in all the classrooms, huh? I don't think so." "I'm serious. I'm telling you. We've been alone all day. I swear, John, alone. For a while, it looked like Jessica was going to squeal, but she didn't. It's awesome." "Alone." "We're running the class ourselves. We got a new motto, kids rule." John shut the refrigerator. "I don't believe this," he said. "It's wild," Bastian said. "I'm telling you, this day will go down in history. You've missed a lot of fun, but the day's not over yet. Come to school. Karen's playing Little Miss Teacher. That's why we need you. You've got to help us party." "I'm coming," John yelled. He ran toward his bedroom. "Just let me get my shoes." "All right," Bastian called after him. "This afternoon, we're going to crank up the music." "Wait," John said, carrying his shoes into the kitchen. "They won't let me back into school without a note." "Don't worry," Bastian said. "You want a note? I'll give you a note. I'll give you a great note. Give me some paper." John gave him a sheet of paper, and Bastian sat down to write. "Good thing I've got perfect penmanship," Bastian said as he carefully formed the letters. He laughed. "Yes, sir, you've had a miraculous recovery." "Come on," John said. "Hurry up." So John and Bastian are on their way back to the school. And when we come back together, we're going to join them back at lunch recess. That was our part 5 of Flying Solo.